be in Sunday school because you get the opportunity to ask questions and be involved more intimately in the conversation. But once again, we're going to the book of 1 Corinthians, the 3rd chapter. I'm going to look at verse number 10. And we're talking along the lines of the judgment seat of Christ. We mentioned that in Sunday school, and I want you to get a better understanding of what it is. There will be a time where the Christians will stand before God, stand before Christ. There will be a time, there will be a day where we will stand before Christ. And I want you to get a clear understanding of what that day will be like. The judgment seat of Christ is not the same thing as the white throne judgment. And you need to have a very clear, once again, understanding of the difference. But 1 Corinthians, the 3rd chapter, verse number 10, this is Paul writing to the church at Corinth. Verse number 10 says, according to the grace of God which is given unto me, as a wise master builder, I have laid the foundation, and another buildeth thereon, but let every man take heed how he buildeth thereon. Paul said, I have laid the foundation, talking about the preaching of the gospel. I have laid the foundation. I have brought the message of Christ to you. I have given you that message, and you have now become a partaker of the message that you have heard. Paul says, now that you have become a partaker and you are now standing on this foundation, he says, now pay attention, Corey, to how you build upon this foundation. You are a part of this foundation. You are now standing on this foundation because you became a partaker of this foundation when you believed on Jesus. When you believed on Jesus, you became a part of this foundation. Christ is the chief cornerstone. The chief cornerstone is the rock that everything is built on. It is the rock that stabilizes the whole building. You are a part of the building. We are a part of the building. Every generation, that building gets bigger and bigger, stronger and stronger. We are a part of the building, which is the foundation of Jesus Christ. Well, excuse me, Jesus Christ is the foundation of this building. Now, we have a responsibility, Scripture teaches us, and our responsibility is to continue to build upon this foundation. So the number one job for the Christian now is, now that you are saved, is to begin to build upon the foundation that you are standing. You have a responsibility to Christ for saving you, for washing you in his blood, for making you a kingdom of priests and kings. You have a responsibility now to take what you have heard, to take what you have received, and to disseminate or give it out and minister out to others, and to build upon this foundation. One thing that you got to understand from today's lesson is that you are building. Every day of your life, if you are a Christian, you are building, you are adding to the foundation. The question that you need to ask or answer is, what are you building? What are you building? What is your life building? What are you creating? Are you building upon the foundation that was given to you, or are you doing your own thing? All right. Are you trying to build your own building? Because Paul says here, now that I've laid the foundation, he says pay particular attention to what or how you build. Don't get on this foundation and do anything. He says there's a way we build on this foundation. Okay. He says here, go back to verse number 10. Verse number 10, according to the grace of God which is given unto me as a wise master builder. He says, I'm a wise master builder. I'm paying attention to what I'm building. He says, God has given me the grace. God has given me the ability, the empowerment, the endowment to do what I'm doing. God has equipped me to build. He says, I have laid the foundation, and another buildeth thereon. But let every man take heed heed. Let every man pay attention. Take heed means to pay attention. Open your eyes and watch what you're doing. He says pay attention to how he built it thereon. For other foundations can no man lay than that is laid, which is Jesus Christ. Now if any man build upon this foundation, if any Christian builds, if any believer builds upon this foundation, gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, stubble, he says every man's work shall be made manifest, for the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by fire, and the fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is. He says everybody, every Christian, every believer is building upon this foundation. Regardless of whether you know it or not, you are building upon this foundation. He says, number two, pay attention to what you're building. Pay attention to how you're building. And not only that, but pay attention to what kind of material you're building with. He says whether you're building with silver or gold, hay or stubble, he says you are building with something. Amen. Pay attention. He said pay attention. Take heed means to pay attention. Pay attention to where you're building, what you're building, the material you're building. Because he talks about a day. He talks about a day. Why do I need to pay attention? Why do I need to pay heed? Why do I need to give attention to how I live my life, to what I do in my life? Why do I need to pay attention? The reason why I need to pay attention, Paul tells us, he talks about a day. He says every man works will be shall be made manifest. In other words, your work, your life, because your work is your life. Say it again. Your work is your life. It is the life that you're building. That is your work. What you do, where you go, how you treat people, how you handle things. This is your work. It is your life. It is the masterpiece. Every day, it is your work. You're building your life. It is your masterpiece. He says the reason why you need to pay attention to your masterpiece, pay attention to your work, is because there's coming a day where your life, where your work is going to be manifested. It may be hidden now. It may be covered now. Nobody may know about it now. But he says there's coming a day where your life is going to be manifested. Well, the things that have been done in the dark are going to come to the light. All right. So he says, Corey, you need to pay attention to how you build with your life. Because you can fool the people, but you cannot fool God. All right. You can hide stuff from the people, but you cannot hide stuff from God. You may even be able to hide from your wife or your husband, but you cannot hide from God. Amen. He said what you are building with your life, every day you're building. Because what you're building in church may not be the same that you're building at home. What you're building in church may not be the same type of material you're building with on your job, but you are still building. So God says you need to pay attention and make sure that what you're building in the sanctuary is the same type of material you're building on your job. Don't come to the church and build with gold and go to the job and build with hay. Don't come to the church and build with silver and go to the job and build with rubber. He says you need to make sure that the quality of the material that you are building the work of your life with is the same in the church as well as on the job, on the corner, here and there. You need to make sure that your material is all the same. Build with quality no matter where you are building. Amen. Amen. Because one day, he says, it's going, Corey, to be made manifest. You can hide it from man, you can't hide it from me. He says there's coming a day. I don't know when that day is, but he says that day is coming. Yeah. He says that day is coming. He says the day is coming, Corey, when what you have done in the dark is going to be made manifest. To be made manifest means everybody can see. It's going to be put on Front Street. It's going to be put on Front Street. It's going to be put on Front Street. So you might fool the people, but there's going to come a time where the people are going to see he wasn't really building with nothing. He talked a good talk, but he wasn't really building with anything. So he says, because you understand this, make sure that what you're building in the house is the same thing what you're building out there. Make sure the quality that you're producing is the same. If you're saved, be saved for real. If you love God, love him in the church, love him on the job. Wherever you are, love God. Build your life with quality material. The Bible talks about, let's go to, that's a long, Hang on, look at my notes. Let's go to Philippians, the second chapter. Philippians, the second chapter. This was not my original message. I want to talk about the high priesthood and you being called into a ministry of intercession, but because of Sunday school, what we talked about in Sunday school, I decided to go this direction because if I wouldn't, it would bother me all week long. I hate to leave questions unanswered because I only get to see y'all once a week until the Lord allows me my weekends again. My weekdays again. But go to the book of Philippians, the second chapter. And it bothers me when I feel like I don't cover a topic well. But I want you to go to Philippians, the second chapter, go down to verse number 12. I want to show you something here. Philippians, the second chapter, verse number 12. It says, wherefore, my beloved, as ye have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence. You start right there. Paul said, when I'm around you, you obey me. He says, when I'm around you, you obey me. When we are together, you do well. He says, but that can't be the extent of your walk. That can't be the extent of your obedience. He says, just like when you're with me, you do well. He says, much more in my absence, I need you to do well. I need you to do well. But we understand as parents, if you're a parent, you understand that the way your child acts around you is not the way your child acts when they're not around you. Your child may be nice and sweet around you, but you go to that school and pop up on them, you will be surprised about what you see and what you hear. Yes, your child, my child too. I got enough sense to know that the way my child acts around me is not the way my child acts when they're not around me. And so don't you think for one second that your child is so perfect that your child acts with respect and dignity and all the time and does. No. Paul understood that. Paul said, yeah, you do well when you're around me. You obey when you're around me. You serve right when you're around me. You build with good stuff when you're around me. He says, but much more. Not even to the same measure. He says, but even to a greater measure, I need you to do things well when you are not with me. Don't do it to the same, but he says, do it even greater. Obey to a greater level when you're not with me. Work even harder, persevere even more, serve even greater when I'm not there. Be an example for me. That's what he's saying. Yes. Because you are my representation. Yes. You are my representation. My child, my children are my representation. When they show up, they embarrass me. They embarrass me. They hurt my feelings when they don't live up to the standard that they've been raised to. It is an embarrassment to me. It is a hurt to my heart to see my child do something they should not do. That they know, I know they know better. I know that there's better in them. I know that they knew that was a dumb thing to do. It is hurtful to my heart. Well, Paul says the same thing here as a parent. He says, don't you do that when I'm not there. He said, it's an embarrassment to me. Yes. I've labored in you. I've ministered. I've poured my life to teach you, to give you the truth, to show you the righteous way. He says, don't you dare do that because I'm not there. If you wouldn't do it if I was there, Paul says, then surely don't do it when I'm not there. All right. He says here, what we at? Verse number, verse number 12. Work out your, wherefore, my beloved, as ye have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. Work out your salvation. You have salvation, but Paul says work it out now with reverence and awe. That's another translation. It doesn't say fear and trembling. It says with reverence and awe. Reverence and awe. Fear and trembling, the same thing. What he's saying here is to have a awe. What is awe? Awe is respect. Awe is reverence. Awe is to have a respect about what you're doing, to have a care about what you're doing, for what you're doing to be important to you. I have a respect. I have an awe. I have a mindset, a certain mindset about what I'm doing. He says, work out your own salvation. In other words, what God has put in you, he says, I want you to work that out. The outworking of what God has put in have placed my love in every Christian.
Yes.
In every Christian, he has placed his love. You have the capacity to love. You have the capacity to forgive. You have the capacity to be patient. You have the capacity to serve. It's not an issue of whether or not you have the capacity to live holy. The Bible says he that received the Spirit has received power. You have the ability to stop doing it. The issue is not whether or not you can stop doing it if you are a child of God. You have the power to do it. It's just the outworking of what God has placed in. Everything is not going to be easy to stop, but just because it's not easy to stop don't mean you can't stop. Every temptation might not be easy to walk away from it, but it don't mean you can't walk away because it's not easy. You just got to put some effort. You got to outwork what God has placed in. Oh, you can walk away. You can do better. You can go higher. You can do more. You can do more. A lot of times when we say this, we say, I did my best. We be lying. A lot of times we say, well, I did my best. You ain't did your best at all. We say that though. Well, I did my best. No, you didn't. You gave a half-hearted effort. You gave a half-hearted effort. And it did not meet the goal that needed to be met. You did not do your best. You could have gotten the job done. You could have made that work. You could have fulfilled that. You could have made that successful, but you gave a half-hearted effort and you got the results of a half-hearted effort. Now, if you want to be successful, it's going to require more than what you gave. And it's not because you can't give it. You have it. You have the ability to do it. You have the capacity. You can be quiet if you need to be quiet. You can be still if you need to be still. You can be patient if you need to be patient. You can walk away if you need to walk away. The issue is, will you allow what's in you to be worked out of you? But Paul says you have to have an awe. You have to have a reverence about your life. You have to have a reverence about what you are building. What you are building has to be important to you. You have to, I said like this, live your life with purpose. Be the person you want to be. You have to be that person you want to be. You have to, on purpose, do things and say things to be who you want to be. If you want to be a liar, then be a liar. But if you want to be a man of integrity, then watch your mouth and watch the things you say. And if you put your word out there, do your best to do it. If you want to be the person you want to be. Amen. It takes ability. It takes effort. It takes an awe about what you're doing. Be the preacher that you want to be. I learned a long time ago in serving under Pastor Hall that you have to learn and you have to decide who you want to be. What type of preacher do you want to be? Do you want to be the preacher that every time somebody mentions your name, they get a negative thought about you? They get a negative, that there's a negative a tag that is attached to you, that is attached to your ministry because of the lifestyle that you live and the things that you've said and done? Or do you want to be the type of preacher that has done right, that has walked with integrity, and when people say your name, they don't have to roll their eyes or shake their head because you have not lived a filthy lifestyle. You have to live on purpose. You decide what you want to be and then pursue it with all. Work it out. I want to be this type of wife. I want to be this type of husband. I want to be this type of deacon, this type of pastor, this type of missionary. I want to be this type of youth director, and work it out with fear and trembling. Listen, if it's not important to you, it ain't going to be important to nobody.
All right, man.
It has to be important to you. Okay, he says here, work it out with fear and trembling, for it is God which worketh in you both the will and to do. He says, do all things without murmuring and disputing. Do all things without murmuring and disputing. He says, be careful what you say. Murmuring means to complain. It means to whine. It means to criticize. It means to condemn and talk about everything. He says, be careful how you live. Be careful how you build. Be careful how you serve. He says, serve, Corey, but leave out the word, the murmuring and the complaining. Leave out the criticizing. Leave out the pointing the fingers. Leave out the blaming. Leave out the murmuring.